My name is Fonda Marshall. I was 29 years old when I learned the man I loved would never truly stand beside me. It happened on my wedding day. I found my father standing alone in a hallway with no seat while 9 people from my fiancé's family sat at the table meant for my parents. Table 1. The front table. The place where the bride and groom's families were supposed to sit. Instead, my parents had been moved to table 14. The last table in the room. Right beside the kitchen door and a trash can. And when I asked Garrett Whitfield why, I heard something that shattered every excuse I had made for him over the last 2 years. I stood there in my wedding dress while 200 guests waited on the other side of the wall, and I made a choice that changed everything. What Garrett said, what his mother did, and what happened after I walked away, that's the story I'm about to tell. And if this story earns it, don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell me your city and local time in the comments too. I always love seeing where people are watching from. Now let me take you back to the morning of June 14th. The last morning I ever woke up as Garrett Whitfield's fiancé. I grew up in Millfield, Ohio. Small town. Everybody knew everybody. My dad, Dave Marshall, worked as a plumber for 35 years. Same boots. Same truck. Same work ethic every single day. By the time I was old enough to understand money, his knees already hurt. By the time I finished college, his back hurt too. But he never stopped working. Not once. Every evening he came home covered in grease and dirt, washed his hands with that orange soap that smelled like gasoline and oranges, and asked me the same question. What did you learn today, baby girl? My mom, Linda, worked in the cafeteria at Millfield Elementary. She knew every student by name. She knew which kids had allergies, which kids forgot lunch money, and which kids came to school hungry. Those kids always got extra food. Always. We weren't rich. Our house was small. My winter coats were hand-me-downs. The water heater rattled behind my bedroom wall all winter long. But our house was warm. Dinner was always on the table. And my parents never once made me feel poor. Not once. I became a nurse practitioner after college. I worked hard. Paid off my student loans by 28. Built a good life for myself. But everything I became started with Dave and Linda Marshall. I thought any man would be lucky to join a family like mine. I was wrong. I met Garrett Whitfield 2 years before the wedding. His father came into the clinic for a checkup, and Garrett drove him there. I still remember seeing him leaning against the front desk. Tall. Clean-cut. Confident. He smiled at me like he already knew I'd smile back. And I did. We started dating that week. Garrett was charming in a way I wasn't used to. He opened doors. Pulled out chairs. Took me to expensive restaurants where the napkins felt softer than my blankets at home. The Whitfields lived in a different world. They were wealthy. Powerful. Their family owned real estate across half the county. Their name was on buildings, charity plaques, and country club walls. Garrett's mother, Constance Whitfield, ran charity events and sat on nonprofit boards. The first time I met her, she looked me up and down and smiled politely. A community clinic, she said. How interesting. Then she mentioned Garrett's ex-girlfriend. A doctor's daughter. The kind of girl she thought belonged beside her son. Garrett squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "She'll warm up." She never did. But by then, I loved him. And love makes you ignore things you should run from. Garrett proposed 14 months later. Private room. Candles. String quartet. His mother accidentally happened to be at the same restaurant. I should have noticed the warning signs even then. But I said yes. Because Garrett wasn't always cold. Sometimes he drove 40 minutes just to bring me soup when I was sick. Sometimes he held me like I was the center of his world. And he used to tell me he couldn't wait to call my dad Dad. I believed him. Then wedding planning started. And little by little, I stopped recognizing the man I was marrying. Constance chose everything. The venue. The menu. The decorations. The guest list. My mother once suggested adding her homemade fried chicken as an appetizer. Constance smiled and said, "That's sweet, Linda, but this is a formal dinner, not a potluck." My mother laughed politely. But I saw her hands tighten in her lap. Every time I pushed back, Garrett gave me the same answer. "Let Mom have this one. After the wedding, it'll just be us. Our own rules." I told myself the wedding didn't matter. Marriage mattered. The future mattered. I kept giving in because I thought the real battle came later. I didn't realize those small moments were the battle. The morning of the wedding, I woke up in my childhood bedroom. Sunlight came through the curtains my mom had sewn years earlier. My dress hung by the closet door. Ivory satin. Simple. Beautiful. Constance had wanted me in some designer gown from Columbus. But this dress was mine. One thing she couldn't control. By 10 that morning, I was at the Whitfield Country Club. The place looked unreal. Crystal vases. White flowers everywhere. Gold-trimmed plates. Hundreds of candles. A string ensemble playing in the garden. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Guests started arriving. Garrett's side filled the front rows. My side slowly disappeared toward the back. My best friend and maid of honor, Margot, leaned toward me during rehearsal. "Why are your relatives all in the back?" I shrugged it off. Probably numbers. But something already felt wrong. The ceremony itself went smoothly. I walked down the aisle. Garrett looked perfect standing there. Perfect smile. Perfect suit. Perfect posture. That was the problem. I spent so much time admiring the outside that I forgot to look deeper. After the ceremony, while guests headed toward cocktail hour, I slipped into the reception hall to check the seating. I'm a nurse. I check everything twice. The room was beautiful. 20 round tables covered in white and gold. Table 1 sat directly in front of the dance floor. That table was supposed to hold both families. I picked up the first place card. Then the second. Then the third. None of them belonged to my parents. Every seat at table 1 belonged to Garrett's family and their rich friends. My chest tightened. I checked another table. Then another. Then another. I found my parents at table 14. The very last table in the room. Beside the kitchen door. Beside a trash can. The chairs weren't even real reception chairs. They were folding chairs. A dirty service cart sat nearby. The kitchen door swung open every few seconds with loud crashes from dishes and pans. I stared at those place cards. Dave Marshall. Linda Marshall. Next to the garbage. I found the wedding planner near the bar. "Who changed the seating chart?" She blinked nervously. "Mrs. Whitfield adjusted it this morning. She said you approved it." I never approved anything. I stood there trying to breathe. Because suddenly I could see the future clearly. My parents would sit there quietly. My dad would smile and pretend it didn't hurt. My mother would act like she didn't notice the kitchen noise. And Constance would know she could treat them however she wanted forever. Every holiday. Every birthday. Every future family event. My parents would always be table 14. The people hidden in the back so the important guests didn't have to look at them. I thought about my father saving money for months to buy his suit. About my mother sewing lace onto her dress late at night. These people gave me everything. And someone decided they belonged beside a trash can. I went looking for Garrett. I truly believed he'd fix it. I was wrong. I found him in the groomsmen's suite adjusting his cufflinks. "Who moved my parents?" He didn't even look surprised. "Mom rearranged some things." "Garrett, they're sitting beside the kitchen." He sighed like I was annoying him. Fonda, can we not do this right now? When then? After dinner? After they spend hours back there? He finally turned toward me. Mom has her reasons. The Hendersons and Porters are sitting at table 1. They're important. More important than my parents. He didn't say those exact words. He didn't need to. He touched my arm gently. Baby, you're stressed. Let's just get through tonight. Tomorrow. Everything was always tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. I stared at him, searching for guilt. For anger. For anything. But there was nothing. He already knew. He knew my parents had been pushed aside, and he still got dressed, fixed his hair, and walked into the wedding smiling. I walked out without another word. But I still needed one final answer. And I got it. I was heading back down the hallway when I heard voices coming from the partially open groomsmen's room door. Constance spoke first. Look at her father. That suit is ancient. Then she laughed softly. And her mother, honestly, did she sew that dress herself? Garrett chuckled quietly. They look poor. Constance lowered her voice. You can't have them at the front table. People will notice. The Hendersons are sitting there. Then Garrett answered. The Marshalls are fine in the back. It's more appropriate. More appropriate. My heart went completely still. Constance spoke again. She doesn't belong here. And Garrett said nothing to defend me. Nothing. I pressed my hand against the wall, trying to stay upright. My father was a plumber. My mother was a lunch lady. And somehow those things were supposed to embarrass me. The man I was about to marry agreed with all of it. I stepped away from the wall. Something inside me snapped into place. Not anger. Clarity. I pushed open the door. Constance froze. Garrett looked startled. I heard everything, I said. Constance instantly switched into her fake polite voice. Fonda, sweetheart. You called my father poor. That's not what I meant. And you, I said, staring at Garrett. You agreed with her. Garrett tried to calm me down. You're emotional. No, I said quietly. I'm finally seeing clearly. Then I walked out. And this time, Garrett didn't follow me. Margot was waiting outside the bridesmaid's room. One look at my face and she knew. I told her everything. Word for word. She listened carefully, then asked one question. What do you want to do? I don't know yet. She nodded. Then she reminded me of something important. The marriage license had not been signed yet. The ceremony wasn't legally binding without it. No signature. No marriage. I stared at her. So technically. You're still free, she said. That changed everything. I found my parents sitting at table 14. Dad sat stiffly in his folding chair. Mom smoothed wrinkles from her handmade dress. The kitchen door banged open behind them. Mom flinched. Dad smiled when he saw me. You look beautiful, baby girl. I nearly broke apart right there. Dad, I'm sorry. He held up one hand. I can sit anywhere. No anger. No bitterness. Just love. That somehow hurt even worse. Then I remembered something. My parents had contributed $12,000 toward the wedding. 15 years of savings. That money paid for the dinner every guest was about to eat. And the people who paid for the food were sitting beside the trash. I looked at them. Stay here, I said softly. I'll be back. The reception started. Guests filled the room. Garrett's family sat proudly at the front. My side scattered around the edges. The MC welcomed the Whitfields by name. Nobody mentioned the Marshalls. Then Constance walked past my parents with her friend Vivian. My mother was quietly fixing a loose thread on her sleeve. Constance looked at her dress and smiled. Bless her heart, she said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. Someone should have bought her a proper dress. Then she added, I suppose people should know their place. My mother looked down. Dad quietly reached under the table and held her hand. And for the first time in my entire life, I saw shame in my father's eyes. Not because he had done anything wrong. Because someone made him feel small. That was the moment I became completely done. Forever. I dragged Garrett behind a column near the dance floor. Your mother just humiliated my mother. What did she say? You know exactly what she said. He rubbed his forehead. Can we please just get through tonight? Go make her apologize. He looked across the room at table 1. At his mother. At the rich guests. At the perfect image. Then he looked back at me and said the sentence that ended our relationship forever. Your parents will be fine. They're tough. That was it. He chose. He chose comfort. He chose appearances. He chose his mother. Now it was my turn. I walked back to table 14 and sat beside my parents. Mom looked confused. Honey, your seat is up front. My family is here, I said. So I'm here. Across the room, Margot watched me carefully. I gave her a small nod. She nodded back. Then I stood up. And walked toward the stage. The room slowly grew quiet as my heels clicked across the hardwood floor. By the time I reached the microphone, almost everyone had stopped talking. I took the mic from the MC. Then I looked out at 200 guests. Crystal glasses. Expensive flowers. White tablecloths. Garrett sitting beside his mother. And my parents hidden in the back. I took a breath. Thank you all for coming today, I began calmly. You came here to celebrate a wedding. But before this night continues, you deserve to know the truth. The room went silent. Most of you know me as Garrett Whitfield's fiancée. But before I was that, and after tonight, I am Dave and Linda Marshall's daughter. I pointed toward the back of the room. My parents are sitting at table 14. Every head turned. All 200 guests looked toward the kitchen door. Toward the folding chairs. Toward the trash can beside my parents. Confusion spread through the room. Then understanding. I continued. This morning, someone changed the seating chart. My parents were removed from table 1 and moved to the last table in the room. I paused. That person was Constance Whitfield. Gasps spread across the room. Constance sat frozen. I looked directly at Garrett. When I confronted my fiancé, he told me not to make a scene. Garrett stood quickly. Fonda. Sit down. He froze. You had the chance to defend my family, I said. You chose not to. The room stayed silent. So silent I could hear the kitchen door creaking open behind me. Then I spoke about my parents. My father worked 35 years fixing pipes. He saved for months to buy the suit he's wearing tonight. A woman near the front started crying. My mother feeds hundreds of children every school day. She knows every hungry kid in town. I swallowed hard. My parents spent 15 years saving $12,000 for this wedding. Guests slowly looked down at their plates. At the food they paid for. Then I looked at Constance. And you put them beside the garbage. The room exploded with whispers. People shifted uncomfortably away from the Whitfields. I saw embarrassment spread across Garrett's face. But it was too late. Way too late. I came here ready to start a marriage, I continued. But I will not marry a man who stays silent while my family is treated like an embarrassment. I reached up and removed my veil. Folded it carefully. Set it on the stage. Then I said the words that changed my life. I deserve better than a man who agrees when someone insults my parents. And my parents deserve better than table 14. I placed the microphone back on the stand gently. Then I walked off the stage. No screaming. No crying. No drama. Just done. I walked back to my parents. Mom was crying quietly. Dad stood up the moment I reached him. I hugged both of them between the folding chairs and the kitchen door. Then the four of us walked out together. Past the silent guests. Past the untouched desserts. Past the frozen string quartet. Behind me I heard Constance shouting. Then Garrett yelling my name. I never looked back. That night I sat at my parents' kitchen table drinking coffee. Same table I'd done homework on for years. At 9:15, Margot called. The marriage license was never signed, she said. Legally, you were never married. I closed my eyes in relief. Then came the missed calls. 17 from Garrett. 3 from Constance. 1 from Richard. I blocked all of them. Because apologies after betrayal don't erase the betrayal. Garrett didn't fail me in private. He failed me publicly while my parents sat beside a trash can. There are some things love can't survive. That was one of them. 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. I sat on my parents' bathroom floor staring at the positive test while my whole future changed in front of me. I cried for a long time. Not because I regretted leaving. I never regretted it. I cried because life had suddenly become harder. Much harder. My mother found me sitting there and quietly lowered herself onto the cold tile floor beside me. She wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You're not alone, she whispered. And for the first time that day, I believed it. I told Garrett through email. Short. Professional. Simple. I'm pregnant. I'm keeping the baby. All communication goes through lawyers. His responses came fast. First begging. Then threatening. Then blaming me. 3 different versions of the same man. Constance even called my parents' house. Dad answered calmly while I listened nearby. She said, that child is a Whitfield. Dad replied quietly, my daughter has a lawyer. Talk to her. Then he hung up. That was it. No yelling. No fear. Just boundaries. Slowly, the Whitfield's reputation began falling apart. People talked. Because 200 guests had witnessed everything. Business partners pulled away. Constance lost her leadership role at the charity foundation. Nobody publicly attacked them. People simply stopped trusting them. That's how consequences work sometimes. Quietly. A month later, Garrett came to my parents' house asking to speak to me. Dad met him at the front door. I should have stood up for your family, Garrett admitted. Dad looked at him calmly. You should have. Garrett asked to see me. Dad didn't move from the doorway. My daughter made herself clear. Garrett's frustration finally showed. You're going to regret this. Dad answered with words I'll never forget. I'm not keeping anyone out, son. I'm keeping the door. Then he closed it softly. And Garrett walked away. 5 months later, I moved into a small apartment near my parents. It wasn't fancy. Beige carpet. Tiny kitchen. Loud bathroom fan. But it was mine. Dad fixed shelves. Mom sewed curtains. Together, they helped me build a home. Some nights I cried from exhaustion and fear. Being a single mother is hard. Very hard. But hard and wrong are not the same thing. I never doubted my decision. Not once. My daughter, Elise Marie Marshall, was born on a Tuesday morning. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. Beautiful brown eyes. Strong lungs. I gave her my last name. Marshall. The name of a plumber and a lunch lady who spent their whole lives loving people well. Dad held her carefully in his rough hands and stared at her in silence for nearly a minute. Mom took dozens of photos. And for the first time in a long time I felt peace. Real peace. A few weeks later, I received a letter from Richard Whitfield, Garrett's father. He apologized for staying silent. He admitted he saw everything and said nothing. I didn't answer the letter. Maybe he meant it. Maybe he didn't. But I had stopped building my life around hope. This time, I let actions matter more than words. A year later, my life looked completely different. Elise was healthy and happy. I became shift lead at the clinic. My apartment walls filled with family photos. The bookshelf Dad built overflowed with children's books. Garrett got visitation weekends through the court. He always arrived on time. Constance never met Elise. Not because I banned her. Because she refused to respect my boundaries. And that told me everything I needed to know. Every Sunday, we gather at my parents' house for dinner. Same old kitchen table. 6 mismatched chairs. Dad's repaired rocking chair. Mom's old crocheted cushion. My folding chair from the garage. No crystal glasses. No fancy decorations. No place cards. Mom makes fried chicken. The same recipe Constance rejected from the wedding menu. Dad lets Elise steal his glasses. Everyone laughs when she throws spoons on the floor. The wallpaper peels a little near the hallway. The back door still lets in cold air during winter. But every person at that table belongs there. Nobody is hidden. Nobody is ashamed. Nobody sits beside the trash. That little kitchen became my real table one. I'm not telling you this story because every situation is the same. They're not. But if you've ever felt pushed to the back. If someone ever made your family feel small. If you've ever been treated like you should feel lucky just to have a seat at the table. Remember this. The people who truly love you will never ask you to be ashamed of where you come from. And if someone watches your family get disrespected and says nothing, they already made their choice. My name is Fonda Marshall. I'm 30 years old now. I'm a nurse. A mother. Dave and Linda Marshall's daughter. I live in a small apartment with beige carpet and a bookshelf my dad built with his own hands. And my daughter has never sat at a table where she didn't belong. Not once. If this story meant something to you, tell me in the comments. And if you've ever stood up for your family, type table 1.